Pats Nation, I don't want to overreact. I don't want to get crazy here. But the Pats might be back. That's right. Why? Because everybody's been talking about this first overall pick. The Patriots, they can't afford to let go of this first overall pick. They can't afford to win and lose the first overall pick. Meanwhile, I've been saying it doesn't matter what pick you have if you have a coach who is an absolute jabroni. Welcome, Pats Nation, to the live stream. We are live on BR, and I'm here to react to one of the best moves the Patriots could have possibly made, which is firing Jerod Mayo after what was one of the most excruciating, brutal seasons of football that hopefully any of us will ever have to endure as Patriots fans. 4-13, and the only reason we reached 4 was because the Bills tried to lose. They definitely attempted to lose. And I'm not sure what happened. I don't know what woke up Kraft. I don't know what woke the Krafts up and gave them the vision and allowed them to see what for so long it felt like they were blinded by. The fact of the matter has been that Jerod Mayo was the worst coach in professional football this year. And I think Jerod Mayo was a great football player. He was a great Patriot on the field. He seems like a good guy. But the fact of the matter is that he was so far in the deep end. He had no idea what he was doing. He had no idea how to swim. And he did not survive the season. So you guys let me know here live. As Shay in the chat says, good riddance. You guys let me know not only what you think of this. I think it will have a positive response. Let me know who you want to coach this team, and we'll go through some of the possibilities here in this video and my preferences. And I realize typically for Bleacher Report, I do not cover the Patriots all that much. Typically, I'm covering the entire NFL, so I'm actually excited to dive into my team. The Patriots have a bright future on paper. Drake May is a stud. They have $130 million in cap space. They have one of the best corners in the NFL, Christian Gonzalez. They have enough to work with, even the limited amount that they have. They found the quarterback, which is the main piece. They have a ton of cap space. They have a great draft pick. But like I said at the top, if you had Jerod Mayo running this team, you were going to go nowhere fast. And you were going to waste Drake May. Not only is Mayo a defensive-minded coach with no capability of coaching offense and no development skills of the quarterback, that does belong to Alex Van Pelt. If he did anything well this year, it was developing the young quarterback that I thought, honestly, Drake May, from, the profile coming out of the draft was, I think, highly misdescribed. The description of Drake May being a project, I think, was misleading, to say the least, at least according to my analysis on the player coming out of college. So I don't give them as much credit for developing the quarterback as some others do, just because Drake May, I thought, was already really awesome, and he should have started in week 1. That being said, I'm excited, man. Like, I can't hide my excitement because I feel like if we would have gone down the road of Mayo being the coach next year, not only would we have probably sucked we would have probably been underwhelming, because I think a lot of people going into year 2 of Drake May would have been excited, like from a wide NFL perspective, even past the Patriots and the Pats fans and Pats Nation. Like, I think people would have been expecting big things out of the Patriots in terms of like getting 7 or 8 wins, like taking that next step, right? But I don't think that would have been possible with that coach. He didn't do anything well. There was no redeeming element of Jerod Mayo coaching this team. Not a single one. From the defense regressing from a top 5 unit in 2023 to a bottom 3 unit in the league in points allowed, a bottom 3 unit in points per drive allowed. The Patriots have never been this bad defensively under Bill Belichick. And a lot of the personnel was very similar, if not the same, as last year, right? To Jerod Mayo's clock management in certain situations, to his lack of aggressiveness, to his lack of understanding of the quarterback position in an offense, to his lack of building a good staff around him, to his coordinator hires at offense and defense, to his press conferences where he constantly didn't have a similar or set the tone message of what he wanted to be. His culture was a mess. His coaching was a mess. The team got worse game after game after game defensively. Couldn't stop the run. He's a linebacker. He played linebacker. He doesn't know how to stop the run. His team couldn't stop the run. He's a linebacker. You've got guys like Kyle Duggar looking awful. Jonathan Jones looking the worst he's ever played in his career. Dietrich Wise, all these veterans of great Patriots teams on defense specifically regressing. You've got the worst O-line in the league. Like, how many things had to go wrong for this Patriots team? And finally, Robert Kraft opened his eyes to see that this guy was not it. So I'm glad that he did that. And I think in this move alone, Kraft proved that he still remains as one of the best owners in sports, in my opinion. Because not many owners with as big of egos as they have are willing to move on after just 1 year, after claiming that this is the next guy. He didn't even go. You guys got to understand that he didn't even go through a coaching search. He didn't even go and interview Mike Vrabel last year. He didn't even go and interview anybody. He didn't interview Harbaugh. No. He went immediately to Jerod Mayo. So for him to be able to move on after 1 year speaks volumes. It speaks to, I think, his ability to let go of his ego and understand that this move was the move to make. Okay? So I want to give an applause to the Crafts for making this choice. And it does appear that they are standing by the claim that they will do what it takes for them to win. Okay? We've got the quarterback. I truly believe that Drake May will be elite at one point in the NFL, as soon as maybe next year. But the next step will be hiring the right coach. Okay? This will be hiring the right coach. This was not the move, bruh, in the chat. I don't exactly know what you're talking about. If you know anything about football, if you watch the Patriots play on a weekly basis, this was the only decision to make. Literally the only decision to make was to fire this coach. The only decision. 100%. If you watch the Patriots, you can't waste time with Drake May. You can't waste time with a rookie quarterback contract. You have to maximize it. Now, the question will be, which coach do we bring in? There are many different options. The two primary ones that will come to mind are Ben Johnson and Mike Vrabel. So let's examine that right now. Ben Johnson is intriguing because The NFL is an offensive league. The NFL is a quarterback league, and the NFL's most successful teams and franchises are led by offensive-minded, play-calling coaches. You think to the most recent successful teams, Andy Reid at the top of the list, Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco, Sean McVay in Los Angeles, Matt LaFleur in Green Bay. You could go down the list. There are almost zero defensive coaches leading teams to very successful seasons right now, right? Harbaugh is a special teams coach. Mike Tomlin's a defensive coach, but he hasn't won a playoff game since 2016. Sean McDermott has Josh Allen. I'm not sure how often he would be successful with other teams and other quarterbacks. I'm just putting that out there. If you want to maximize your ceiling, I feel like offensive coach is probably the move, especially when you consider, okay, Ben Johnson is the best play caller in the league right now. I would make an argument. Even better than like Kyle or Sean or any of the others. I think that right now at this moment, what he's doing in Detroit is special. Like he is at the forefront of offense. So if you could get that guy, he's from North Carolina. Drake May, North Carolina. He's almost the perfect quarterback for Ben Johnson's system. If you watch what the Lions do from a play action standpoint, a vertical passing standpoint, the emphasis on the run game, and then the shot plays down the field, it would almost fit Drake May to a T, in my opinion, with Ben Johnson in that offense. He would get our run game going to a different level, and it would be a young, different, fresh approach that is totally polar opposite from the Bill Belichick era, which might be something that the Patriots do need. Okay? So I think that Johnson's ability to put together an offense and sustain success on that side of the ball, along with probably fitting Drake May the best, would be very, very attractive to New England. And what he would maybe be able to do with all that cap space, building the offensive line, building the offense, making our offensive line better. You look at what he's done with Detroit's, and Detroit has a lot of talent on the offensive line, but they've made that the most powerful offense in football there in Detroit. Okay, so Ben Johnson's very interesting. On the other side of things, you've got Mike Vrabel. I love Mike Vrabel as a coach, not only a player, but as a coach. I've long thought that Mike Vrabel was a top 10 coach in the NFL for pretty much the entire time he was in Tennessee. And at times I thought he was a top 5 coach in the NFL. And the reason I would put a claim on that is because Mike Vrabel was one of the most winningest underdog coaches in the NFL. Besides Mike Tomlin, Mike Vrabel was the best underdog coach in football. And Mike Vrabel had more recent success in the playoffs than even Mike Tomlin. And he took some teams that I felt like shouldn't have been taken that far, and he elevated those teams. And I think the biggest indication of being a great head coach is doing more with less, right? Doing more with less. And I think Vrabel did that consistently in Tennessee. I thought he kind of got messed around with the front office and some of the decisions like A.J. Brown and stuff like that. But where I love Mike Vrabel, I think he's similar to Belichick, but he's a little bit different. He brings a toughness. He brings a grit. He brings a physicality to his football team that's a clear identity and that I think very much fits cold weather Patriot football. He's obviously familiar with the culture of the existing New England Patriots, the Patriot way, all that sort of stuff, but he has his own flair, and he's proven that in other places he can be successful, unlike somebody like Jerod Mayo, who's completely new. Okay. On top of that, I think that Vrabel, he probably is one of the better game managing coaches that I've seen over the last half decade. Like his ability to understand when to call timeouts, how to call the game, how to maximize his team. I think he's excellent in that regard. So those are very much positives for Vrabel. On one side, you've got Ben Johnson, offensive wizard coach that might maximize the quarterback. But on the other side, you've got more of a leader of men, more of a head coach, and a guy that's going to, I think, delegate towards his coordinators. And I think he's going to be able to lead a physical football team on a yearly basis. Now, with some of that, it comes to be like, okay, you've got to nail your coordinator hires. So I think one of the questions with Mike Vrabel would be, who would his offensive coordinator be? That's the main concern with hiring somebody that's not an offensive first coach, because of the constant hiring of the best offensive minds in football to replace other head coaches. So I think somebody that's been floated out there has been Josh McDaniels as the offensive coordinator returning to New England. I'd be cool with that because I think Josh was always great in New England, especially obviously with Tom. Now, a lot of that had to do with Tom, but I think that McDaniels has always been a great offensive coordinator, and I think it would at least allow you security at the offensive coordinator position because he's never going to be hired as a head coach. So for at least the short tenure, we could see how that would work out. But what I like about that dynamic and relationship is that they would understand each other from a full vision of 3 phases of football because they are both Patriot guys. So they would understand how they want to play on all 3 phases. I think McDaniels would bring back a little bit more of a physicality to our offense. And I think Drake could still fit a McDaniels offense because of his ability to be a dynamic athlete in the run game, where Josh always kind of wanted to have that element rather with Tim Tebow or Cam Newton. I think that he could bring some of those, that Tom Brady spread attack, but also the power running game back to the Patriots. And then Vrabel would obviously lean towards the defensive side and then managing the entire team. It would be interesting to see who he would pick as the defensive coordinator, but that's not as big of a judgment, in my opinion. Not a big question. So those would be the 2 head coaches that I think are very appealing. Outside of that, a coach that I really like this year on the offensive side is Liam Cohen of the Bucs. Liam Cohen of the Bucs, the offensive coordinator, I think he's been phenomenal. That would be kind of an underrated guy that I think I would float out there for a lot of people. I think Liam Cohen is a great play caller. So if they were to go after another type of guy like that, they couldn't get those 2 options. That would be somebody I'd float out. Brian Flores, I've always really liked. I think he should be a head coach in the NFL. He's a defensive guy again, though. It didn't really work out in Miami, I think, because of the friction between the ownership. Flores is a very strong personality, same as Vrabel. But the attractive part about Vrabel and about Flores to me that I'm not sure about Ben Johnson is the physicality, toughness element. That's an element of a football team that I think playing in New England justifies. Like, you need to be a physical, tough football team to play in the AFC East and to be a team that plays in New England because of the weather and because of the environment. So unlike some teams like Chicago and what they've tried to do in Chicago. Why the heck would Liam Cohen come to this team? Pretty easy answer. So you've got Drake May, $130 million in cap space, a top 5 draft pick, and the chance to be a head coach. Pretty obvious answer. Dylan says Mayo knew the team was not playoff tier. He was trying new things. Can you please describe what new things he was attempting? I'd love to hear that. I'm not exactly sure what he was trying. Lucky says, would Mayo still be a coach if they lost and got the number 1 pick? That's a great question, Lucky. I do not know that. I don't think anyone knows that except for the Crafts themselves. It's hard to really say. This team was not talented enough to put a bad season on the first-year coach. Okay, I don't think the team was as lacking talent as you think. First of all, you have a really talented quarterback. Second of all, I think the receivers are, I think, a little bit better than people give them credit for. Third, I think the defense on paper was a top 10 unit entering the NFL this year. And they have gone, and this is the biggest thing about the Jerod Mayo firing that I think justifies it. You take a top 5 defense from last year in EPA, success rate, many categories. You regress them 20 spots backwards to being a bottom 5 defense in the league, to the point where they could not stop a nosebleed. So for a guy that's supposed to be a defensive coach, you throw in the constant press conferences where he doesn't know what he's talking about. He's constantly retracting claims that he made. He's not backing up decisions that he's making, at press conferences. He doesn't know what he's saying, what he's speaking about. So I just think from a culture standpoint, it was a mess. From a defensive standpoint, it was a mess. And then from an offensive standpoint, I think that if you look at, just for example, look at last year. if the Patriots had a quarterback as good as Drake May on the team last season, what would their record have been considering their defense was so strong? You know, would Bill Belichick still be here if Drake May was the quarterback last year? Right? Because I think you can look at Mac Jones last year. You can look at Bailey Zappi. I don't know if you guys watched him against the Ravens. He is an absolute disaster. You could probably say those quarterbacks are not starting quarterbacks in the NFL. And the Patriots were still competitive in a lot of games last season. So I'm just going to throw that out there, right? Bond says, would it be better to trade for a wide receiver or throw money at free agent? It depends on who the player is. Depends on who the player is, and it depends on, I think, their age, their fit, whatever it may be. But I would rather sign a free agent if the players are the same. I'd rather sign one because a trade, you have to trade assets, right? So like the same player, if it's you're trading for T. Higgins or you're signing T. Higgins, I'd rather sign T. It's the same player, right? But I definitely feel like it will be intriguing to see. And that will depend on who the coach is. That will depend on who they're going to hire, right? I think if they hire somebody like, well, if you think about it, like Ben Johnson and you think about Mike Vrabel, I think both of them would have a similar stance of they would probably want to build the line of scrimmage first. Just knowing where those guys come from, right? Ben Johnson coming from Detroit. Mike Vrabel being the guy that it's all about, you know, physicality, being the more physical football team. I think they would want to build the trenches first. I don't think they would be into picking a receiver or skill talent player high in the draft. I could be wrong, but I think that would be their preference. Maybe even a defensive player could be the claim there, or like a pass rusher or something like Abdul Carter or something like that. That could also be a possibility, but especially without the first pick, you know, many would have assumed Travis Hunter. Maybe they could still get like McMillan or something like that, but that's just kind of where my brain goes there. Okay. What promising coach would be dumb enough to come here? Again, Matt, so explaining this for the third time. The Patriots have a quarterback that I think will very likely end up being a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. They have $130 million in cap space. They have one of the best corners in the NFL. They are well ran from an ownership standpoint. They're a historic franchise. Who would not want to coach the Patriots? Let's be honest. They have a top 5 draft pick. Who would not want to coach the Patriots? Like, honestly, this should be one of the best locations to go. You think about all the other openings across the NFL. How many are better than this job? The ones that we actually project that are going to be open. Who would not want to coach this team? Honestly. Like, so I see it totally different. I think you guys are completely wrong if you have that stance. You're completely wrong. MC says fire Wolf. That one's tough to me. I don't think that's what they're going to do. I don't think so. I think what they're going to do is keep him for another year. Unless the demand of the head coach that they want to hire is that they have a new general manager. Maybe they're keeping him for now to see what happens. That's questionable. I don't exactly know, but Wolf did not have a good season. Did not have a good offseason. I'm highly skeptical of him, just as you are. But I think it takes a lot longer to see if a GM is good than to see if a head coach is good. I think you can see how good a head coach is by the command of his team, by the effort level of his players, by the preparation of his players, by the mistakes his players make, by how competitive they are on a weekly basis, by the decision-making he makes in game. For Jerod Mayo to say after a game that after they cross the white lines that he can't do anything for them is one of the biggest jabroni statements I've ever heard in my life. You know, that right there was pretty much the indication this guy had no idea what he was talking about, no idea what he was doing. Okay. And that was just one of many statements he had made throughout the course of the year. Matt says, Wolf drafted one of the worst classes I have ever seen. But the thing is, the thing that's going to afford him another chance is Drake May. So I would give him another year and see. That is only if Mike Vrabel and or Ben Johnson and or Liam Cohen and or Brian Flores, whoever the coach is going to be, wants him as the GM. If the difference between getting Ben Johnson and not getting Ben Johnson is keeping Elliott Wolf, then sure, I would move on from Elliott Wolf. I don't really see him as a difference maker. Okay, but I also felt like when he was hired, he was much more qualified to be a general manager than Jerod Mayo was qualified to be a head coach, because there was a lot of previous experience there. You know, he's grown up in kind of this position of potentially being a GM basically his entire life. So I'm able to give him a mulligan, so to speak. It's actually very strange, some of the takes we're getting in the chat here. I think it's Dom says, so Caleb Williams is not better than Drake. No, not even close. Caleb Williams is outright bad. He's actually outright bad this year. If you look up a lot of the metrics, he is not good. Like, it's actually not that close. Wolf sucks. That's fair. That's fair. I can't disagree with you. Dust says, will Kraft bend the knee to Vrabel if he wants to be GM and head coach? I honestly doubt that Vrabel wants to be both. I think at most he would want some sort of Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan type of, Sean Payton type of deal where he has some say, but he's not exactly the GM, if that makes sense. He's not Bill Belichick. He has influence, but he's not Bill Belichick. I think he would most prefer that he has somebody by his side that he understands, that's on the same page, because that's what's most important. Having that connection between GM and head coach that understands each other, what team they want to put on the field, what they value in each position, things like that. I think that's most important. Why is Drake better than Caleb? He's better at managing pressure. He's more accurate. He's got a better arm. He's faster. He's smarter. He's bigger. He doesn't take constant sacks. I don't know. Why isn't he better? Like, have you watched both players play? Like, it's not that close, to be honest. Is Travis Hunter a lock? No. I don't even think it's close to a lock. I think he could go ahead of where we pick. I think that they could decide to go with a different preference of position or player. Would I like Travis Hunter? Sure. I don't really have a strong stance on who I want at that spot yet, personally. Who do we take at 4? That's a good question, man. I don't know. I think it could be Banks out of Texas. I think it could be Carter, the edge rusher out of Penn State. I think it could be McMillan, or it could be Hunter. Any of those options would make sense to me. Anyone else? I don't think so. Maybe we could even trade back. That's also a possibility. Robert says we need a left tackle. I agree. I wonder who will be available in free agency. Probably no one significant at left tackle, but we could certainly get better than what we currently have at left tackle. McMillan's a stud. I wouldn't mind McMillan at all. What else do I got to say about this, man? All I know is I'm excited. I'm excited that I think they made the right move. It might seem early. It might seem like they're panicked from some people's perspectives because they only gave the guy 1 year. But I think the signs were there. Like, I think there were clear signs that this wasn't going to work. And it was not the right move to keep Jerod Mayo for the long term. I think that clearly this needed to be made. This needed to be done. Firing Jerod Mayo had to be done. because of the defensive regression, because of the culture control, because of the understanding that you must maximize Drake May on his rookie deal. And now I'll be extremely excited to see the future direction of this franchise. Which coach do they bring in? What direction do they take in free agency in the draft? There's so much that the Patriots can accomplish this offseason. And I think they've accomplished step one, which is making the move at coach and understanding that they made a mistake and starting fresh. We now know we have a quarterback. Okay, let's take it from there. So, is the right move Vrabel? Asks Nervous. Shout out to Nervous in the chat. I think it's definitely a good move. I don't know if it's the right move because if in my heart of hearts, I think the best move would be Ben Johnson. But he's also going to be the hardest to get. I love Mike Vrabel, though. And this is not just from the Patriot fan perspective. As somebody that has watched every team religiously, in depth, studied every team, I thought that the Titans in Mike Vrabel's era was a phenomenally tough team to beat. That constantly outplayed their expectation, constantly was elevated by coaching, pulled off upsets that you would have never seen coming, was one of the toughest teams in the league. So I don't think either choice would be bad. I don't think that choosing somebody like Brian Flores would be bad. I definitely feel that the Patriots have options here. And I think some of the fan base doesn't believe that because of what they saw from the Patriots this year. But understand all the assets this team has moving forward that is extremely appealing to a coach, right? That's what you have to think about. What are we going to do with O-line when we have no playmakers? Well, typically you want to build your O-line first. You want to build the line of scrimmage first, and then you want to add playmakers. Just take, for example, the Lions, right? They built their offensive line. Penei Sewell was a top draft pick for them, right? Once they established that they had a good offensive line, then they went out and they made plays for Jamison Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta, right? Then they went out and they did that. So that's just a recent example, but I think a large majority of teams that are successful are built at the line of scrimmage. It's very rare that a team is not great at the line of scrimmage and they have a lot of success. Very rare. Robert says O-line is outside of quarterback is more important. Brady's last year, we had a crap O-line. It looked bad. So the O-line is where you need to start. I don't know if I necessarily agree that the Patriots O-line was bad in Brady's last year. I thought that the receivers were like just historically awful, but I do agree with the rest of the sentiment though. The Ravens have a good O-line and a good D-line, especially in the run game. Pass game, a little bit different, but they haven't won a Super Bowl though. They haven't won a playoff game. You know, they've won like 2 playoff games in Lamar's era. So maybe they could be a little bit better on the D-line. Ravens O-line is good. Ronnie Stanley's one of the best left tackles in the league, and Tyler Linderbaum's one of the best centers in the league. Any chance at T. Higgins? I think the Patriots will be probably his second choice outside of the Bengals, because I think when you factor in money and you factor in quarterback, I think first of all, he'll get a top of the market contract from New England because they have more money than anyone else. So I think that after the Bengals, if he can't go back to the Bengals, the Patriots will probably give him the best option he can possibly get in terms of money, understanding what they were offering Calvin Ridley, right? They offered Calvin Ridley more money than Tennessee did, but he wanted to play for Tennessee. Okay? So, all right. I think I'm going to end it there. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's Mitch. You can find me on YouTube, The Bottom Line View. I am a Patriots fan, but I cover all 32 NFL teams on that channel. You can also follow me here on BR. I'm here like this week, especially 3 times. So if you want to tune into my live streams, but I'll be here pretty regularly. So make sure to follow me for Patriots stuff, for NFL stuff. I mostly cover the wide range of NFL topics, but every once in a while I'll get hit with a Patriots topic, which is always exciting for me. So thank you guys for tuning in. It's Mitch. I think the Patriots made the correct decision firing Jerod Mayo. Peace.